Hey everyone, welcome back to GuildCast. I'm your host Shawn, and today is July 24th, 2026. And I have a very special episode today because I'm not just doing this by myself. I actually have a guest. How you doing, Doombox?
Hello, Shawn. Thank you so much for having me on here. I'm pretty sure that 13-year-old me would be freaking out right now if he knew that I would be on the new version of GuildCast. So this is really kind of like a dream come true, 20 years in the making. So I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, who would have ever thought back then, that we would be doing this and also still playing the game? I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, it has been part of my life for more than half of it at this point. I mean, I started playing Guild Wars when I was 12 and I'm 33 now. So do the math. It's been over half my life.
Wow. You know what's funny is I was 30 when I started GuildCast. So
Wow, we've
you can
come
do the
full
math on
circle.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So why don't you talk a little bit about, just as like an introduction, talk about your channel and the guild and kind of, briefly what you do and all that good stuff. Tell us how popular you are.
I don't really know how to quantify that, but I mean, I have been making Guild Wars videos on YouTube since 2008, which is crazy because back then it was still like the early days of YouTube and like gaming content was not common back then. If you searched for Guild Wars videos, you would find like, you know, 140p like pixelated game cam rips of people attempting like a farm and you could barely see what was going on and they would type into notepad on the recording to like talk to you. There really wasn't any sort of like um like spoken guides and stuff like that. So I started playing Guild Wars as a 12-year-old. Like I mentioned, I was super into RuneScape as a kid. And that's what I played in middle school, sixth and seventh grade. And I finally quit that game because it was taking up too much of my life. And then one of my neighbors across the street growing up came over to my house one day and was like, "Hey, I got this game called Guild Wars. You should play it." And I was like, "Nah, I don't need another online game like that. Like, I just got off of this RuneScape addiction. So I don't really want to try that." And he just like forcibly installed it on my computer without my permission, and I started playing it. And here I am, 21 years later. So shout out to my neighbor Harry if you're out there. He basically changed my life. So there you go. But back
Wow.
to the original question about my channel and stuff. Yeah, I mean, it was basically just I was a kid messing around with Windows Movie Maker and recording software and was super into Guild Wars and quite honestly, not to be too much of a brown noser here, but your podcast is one of the major things that inspired me to start making stuff back then because I saw what could happen if you recorded something and put it out there, and I was interested in doing something similar. Obviously my early stuff is pretty rough. Anyone can go back and look at my early videos and you'll hear a 14-year-old kid squeaking into a microphone, but it was enjoyable, and it sort of it eventually picked up a following, and as a result the guild grew and stuff, and it was just cool. And I did take a lot of breaks here and there. I haven't consistently been making videos for 20 years. I went to college for a big chunk in there, and then when Guild Wars 2 was out, I kind of dropped off the map for a bit, but then started up a sort of like a fresh playthrough back in 2019 and kept that going. And then with Reforged, I just jumped back in and started making guides and news videos and all that again, and it's been cool to see.
Yeah, I like I was telling you, I've been watching a few of your most recent videos, catching up on them, and yeah, that it's really great stuff. I feel like proud because you just mentioned that Guildcast like kind of started your interest in that, and it's like, wow, this is really cool to listen to this guy doing these great videos, and like what would have happened if I didn't sit down and like you said, just record yourself, right? And so I think it's interesting. It's super interesting.
Yeah, it was like I said, there was nothing like that out there at the time. If you can rewind back to 2005, 2006, and then there's a chance that some people listening weren't even born yet.
Oh
Back
yeah.
then, there was not really any sort of gaming media. There were a couple of like channels on the actual TV that would talk about video games, and there were like magazines and stuff, but you couldn't just go on Twitch, and watch a streamer. There was no like YouTube was like not a thing really. And I was like I was an iPod kid back then. I had my iPod Nano that I got for Christmas, and I was like, putting songs on it, and I was on the iTunes store, and I just searched for Guild Wars on the iTunes store and found GuildCast. I was like, wait, what's a podcast? I've never even heard of that. And I pressed the play button. Here was this guy like talking about this game that I loved, and I was like, whoa, this is really cool. And I eventually ended up joining your guild. You guys had a guild set up, GuildCast Listeners United. And you guys had like an application process back then. It was pretty
Yeah.
legit. And I remember like you had to send an email to a certain inbox, and somebody would like reach out to you in game, and you actually had to do like a mini interview. I remember I was like kind of nervous. One specific memory that stands out to me is I don't remember who it was that was interviewing me, but one of the questions they asked was, "What's your favorite mob?" And 13-year-old me didn't know what that meant, so I'm googling what is a mob in a video game on the second monitor, like trying to answer these questions. And they, apparently I passed. I'm surprised you guys accepted a 13-year-old kid into your guild back then. Uh, but it was cool. I remember I worked my way kind of up the ranks. I started in a smaller guild called the Ramen Empire. You guys had, it was
Oh yeah.
kind of like the trial guild. And then once I was in for like a month or so, I moved into the real GuildCast Listeners United guild, and that was the first community that I was really like part of, besides my like friends that introduced me to the game, like chatting with some of the people there. I mean, I'm still friends with some of those people. I mean, they're in KOE today, and we kind of owe our entire guild's history to that whole thing, because as longtime listeners will know, once you ended the original run of the podcast, you also ended the Guildcast guilds. And I remember like being really like devastated by that news as a kid. So I logged in. It was like Christmas time, 2007. I logged in um, to like watch the end of the guild. Like I was gonna sit while the ship was going down, and somebody in the Alliance chat was in a guild called KOE, Knights of Echovald, saying, "Hey, any like Guildcast fans that want a new home, like we're recruiting." So I ended up joining KOE from this guy named Chipmunk Kitty. He invited me. He was a cool
Oh
dude.
yeah.
And yeah, I got connected with those guys. A lot of the people that I got to know through the Guildcast Guild were in KOE, and I started getting connected with them. And eventually in like 2008, I became leader of the guild because Chipmunk Kitty quit the game to play the Xbox 360. He was one of those Call of Duty kids. So, and somehow the guild has been continuously running for the last almost 20 years now. And like I never would have joined it if not for the Guildcast Alliance, and I never would have really made videos if I hadn't taken an interest through seeing your stuff originally. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Wow. That's an incredible I read you wrote like a doc, like a Google Doc about most of this, about the history of KOE and how glue and all that stuff and how it all kind of came together. And I remember reading that when I first joined the Discord, the KOE Discord. It was a couple years ago, and I remember thinking like, wow, this is incredible. Like I didn't even remember a lot of this stuff, and you really documented it and kind of kept track of it really well. And what's funny is I'm trying to think of who it was who may have been doing the applications back then, because I delegated a lot. Like I was I don't know. It was kind of a weird time because I was old, right? And a lot of people came in, and it was like you said, a lot of kids, a lot of 13-year-olds and stuff like that. And I felt like I should probably get someone else to chat with these kids. Not a 30-year-old guy. I shouldn't really, that's kind of weird. So I had a lot of younger people in ranks where they were, talking to a lot of people. And I know that at one point you made a joke, not just now, but I think it was on your document, that it was called that KOE was like kids. Was it
The
Kids of Echo?
kids of Echovald. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a nickname used by, I guess, some people in the Glue Alliance that I guess weren't fond of playing video games with squeaky 13-year-olds.
I didn't even know that until I read that thing of yours. I was like,
Well,
oh, I didn't know that.
I mean, not to not to like out these people too much, because they're friends of mine, but the KOE before I joined, back when I was still in the Guildcast Guild, they actually hosted a Guildcast episode. It was the Assassin episode, and and it's very much, they're very much children. Like, and I think that maybe cemented the reputation. I don't know, but I mean, there were definitely some immature things that happened in the KOE side of the Guildcast Alliance, and quite honestly, we're still pretty immature, so we never really grew up in that respect. But
Yeah, me neither.
yeah,
It's fine. Well, I think that's interesting. I don't know if you remember when Ruby was in the guild, and I feel like she did some of that application stuff. I don't remember exactly. Ruby Bear, who is now, of course, well, I don't even know what her title is now, but she went to community manager at ArenaNet, and then I think she does some kind of marketing, like head of some kind of marketing thing. Don't quote me on that, but she does something on that side of the community slash marketing side at ArenaNet. And for a while she was my co-host, kind of after I brought Guildcast back the first time. And that was fun. That was a lot of fun. We would just sit and nerd out about Guild Wars, just every episode. Um, but yeah, I think she was in the guild. Her husband was in the guild, and just oh man, I just think of a lot of people. So what's funny is actually we got some people coming into the Discord now, and because I've just started releasing these on YouTube, these episodes, and so a lot of people are coming in, and there's a lot of names I haven't even thought about in 15 years. You know what I mean? And or I don't know. Like I never would have thought that they would have come listen to the show again, like pretty much on day one. When I started this back. I don't know. It's really interesting to me though, the whole like 6 degrees of separation kind of thing. Where everything is just intertwining, and how this person knows this person, and we're the craziest thing to me is when I see don't take offense to this, but when I see your names of people I remember from back then, I still think of you as kids. You know what I mean?
oh, I
And
mean,
it's not
we
in a bad
we
way.
pretty much are like.
But it's not in a bad way. It's just like I still see myself as a 30-year-old. So it's, it's that's just how it
Yeah,
works
I
in
mean,
my
and I
brain.
see myself as a 12-year-old, so it's kind of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no, the whole like the different like generations of people who got to know each other through Guild Wars, and it's just really cool. Like, I mean, I made quite literally lifelong friends through the game and through the guild, and like one of my guild officers that I met through the guild stood in my wedding, and two people that met in the KOE guild got married. So, I mean, the 6 degrees of separation thing, if you didn't start the podcast and by extension the guild, like these two people wouldn't be married right now. Like, so,
Wow.
um,
See,
and
that's powerful stuff. I think like Sanea, who was also my
yeah,
co-host
of
at,
course.
at first, she got married to Cal Agram, who was also, he did a PvP segment. And it's just crazy. Like they have kids, and at least one kid. I don't know how many, but you know what I mean? Like they've been married for a long time. It's just, that's crazy to me. Um, and I can't even really think about it too deeply, because it's almost like I'm responsible for all of this. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I mean, we kind of affectionately refer to you in the KOE server as the grandfather of the guild, because it's kind of true. I mean, KOE was started by a guy named Arachnus, who I actually just reconnected with this past year. I had never even met the guy that created the guild that I've been in, and it was really cool to like reconnect with him and just kind of reminisce about those times in the Guildcast days. And yeah, I mean, being like a kid on the internet back then was an interesting experience because we were kind of mixed in with like actual adults, and it was like surprising that they were like okay with us being in their company, because you'd think that people that were like actually old and had careers and children would not want to be around like, squeaky kids playing a video game. But some of the guys that I got to know during that time were like older than me by like 20 plus years, and we like became friends. It didn't really even matter. Like we just had this common game that brought us together, and it was really cool. And I'm still in touch with a lot of those people from back in, '06, '07, all these years later.
That's so cool. I know I've probably talked about it on the show before, but my earliest memories as far as starting Guild Wars, starting to play Guild Wars, I played it. I got it in, I don't even remember. It was sometime in the summer of 2004. When did it come out?
It was
2004?
2005,
2005. Okay, then it was
April.
summer
Yeah.
2005. Yeah, April, that's right, April 28th. So it was probably June of 2005 because then I started the podcast in November. And I remember I only played it for a couple months and I was like, I had already been doing a podcast, like a funny music podcast. And so I kind of liked, I listened to podcasts when I was at work and I did a boring computer work and I would just listen to podcasts. And I said, you know what? I need to make a podcast about Guild Wars because I'm loving this game. And so I just did it. And I didn't really even know that much about it because, I only had a couple months experience in the game, but I think everyone was pretty much at that point. But I was just, I would come home from work and research the heck out of that game and just learn all the best builds and, how to do this, how to do that. And I would just try to, I've always been kind of like a teacher mentality, so I just wanted to like teach people about the different stuff. But then it turned into more just casual kind of, conversations and getting people on and talking about the game and stuff like that, which I really enjoy a lot.
Yeah, I mean, me too. I love talking about the game. Like I said, I literally can't stop talking about it. Like, so yeah, I mean, it was kind of a perfect thing to be playing at that age, because that was, like when you're, like a teen, it's kind of like your coming of age time. And like I said, the Guildcast community was my first ever like online community I was ever a part of. And when you're that age and into a game that you really like, and like that stuff sticks with you, like, and it has for this whole time. And I'm still playing to this day, and it really is like a special game for sure. Like I love the community, I love the game itself. And now that there's a Guild Wars 3 coming out, I can't even believe that, honestly. Like that is crazy news.
Yeah, it really is because even with Guild Wars 2 when it came out, I think a lot of people were like, why would they do that? Like they already have a great game and they've already added content and remember back then they said they were going to do it every 6 months.
Yeah, that was
And yeah,
wild.
and so then they, after Nightfall, they're like, well, I think we're gonna go, we're gonna do something different. And I think a lot of us knew, oh man, those were some great times sitting there speculating about what they're gonna do next. And then the little hints of Guild Wars 2 came out. There's a sequel coming and people are just going nuts. Oh, it was so great. That was like a great time to be, kind of in this, this side of like, I don't know, the industry, I guess. Um, and it was a lot of fun to just kind of ride that wave of like excitement and everything for all that. But now, because Guild Wars 2 was bigger than Guild Wars 1 as far as bringing in new people who a lot of people never even played Guild Wars 1. And now we're looking toward another one and it kind of makes I feel like we're in the same place where we're kind of like, yeah, we're excited about it, but what what's it going to bring to the table? You know what I mean? And I know it's going to be a prequel, and I love that part of it. I love prequels. And but what do you think? Like as far as what we know right now, which isn't very much, admittedly, what do you want to see in Guild Wars 3? Like what kind of things are missing from 1 and 2 maybe that you want to see in 3?
So, I mean, I'm definitely in the camp of like cautiously optimistic. Like, as somebody that was very much into Guild Wars 1 when the announcement for Guild Wars 2 first came out, I was actually like not super excited back then. Like, I kind of have this reputation among people that maybe like casually watch my videos that I'm like a Guild Wars 2 hater and I'm like a Guild Wars 1 only purist. That's not true. I played Guild Wars 2 for like a solid 10 years and got all the like legendaries and all that stuff. I was pretty like into that game when it was in its prime, but eventually did move back to Guild Wars 1. But when they first announced Guild Wars 2, I was like devastated. I was like, why would they get rid of Guild Wars 1? This is like a perfect game. And they canceled the Utopia expansion, which I know Guild Wars 1 fans, some of them are still hoping that someday they'll release it. Um, but I eventually did get into Guild Wars 2, but Guild Wars 1 is like my home, my happy place. So Guild Wars 3, I do get sort of those same feelings again, but less so, since ArenaNet and 2 weeks now have said that they're going to maintain all three games at once, which is like incredible. So even if Guild Wars 2 ends up not being for me, then the other two games will still be operating, which I think is perfect. And on that note, I think that it makes sense that Guild Wars 3 will kind of be a distinct thing. Obviously, like you said, we don't really know anything about it, but Guild Wars 1 for your deck building, dungeon crawling type game. Guild Wars 2 will be like the sort of like the classic MMO open world type thing. And I know they've mentioned that Guild Wars 3 will be like smaller scale parties and stuff. So rather than like Zerg events, there's going to be like closer knit teams. So I think it makes sense that it could be more of like a sort of just like an action RPG type thing, maybe similar to like a Destiny type game, but obviously in like a fantasy setting. So, and I think that would kind of scratch the itch for all types of gamer stereotypes. Like the boomers of the gaming community will be playing Guild Wars 1, and people that want more of like a casual kind of open world MMO type thing will play Guild Wars 2. And like, I think that Guild Wars 3 will appeal to like console bros, like people that are playing like PS5, like AAA stuff, and maybe like Guild Wars 2 players that are kind of tired of that model and want to move on to something else. And like I said, if one of the games is not your preference, you can just go play one of the other ones, and knowing that it's going to be supported. I think that it's nice that they've kind of learned from what happened with Guild Wars 2's release, where they just shut off, updates in Guild Wars 1, left it in maintenance mode for 15 years, and then brought it back with Reforged, seeing it explode again with population. I think that leaves me very optimistic for the future of the whole franchise, honestly.
Yeah, I just hope they don't turn it into Fortnite. You know what I mean? Fortnite has its place, but
I mean, have you seen some of the skins in Guild Wars 2? It kind of already is.
yeah, yeah, and yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think it would attract a younger audience, and to be honest, that's what they need to because us boomers, we we can't really we can't maintain this. We're going to be in old folks' homes here pretty soon, and hopefully they have good internet. I don't know, but as far as I, you kind of categorized all that. I think it might you're probably spot on. There are a lot of us who still are like, I'm not leaving Guild Wars 1, but I get that. But at the same time, I really enjoy Guild Wars 2. I had the same thing where I played the heck out of that game for a couple of years, and it got to the point where I just had to step back, and it's just too much. But I've noticed, I have a lot of friends on Guild Wars 2 that I kind of carried over from 1, and I went on the other day, and I haven't gone on in a couple months, but I went on, and they still haven't connected in years. You know what I mean? It's like, wow, that they're really, it'd be great to see them. And I think that maybe they, I don't know, don't realize how good Guild Wars 2 is. But at the same time, I do get it, because I think that Guild Wars 2, to me at least, is a little overwhelming. You have all this new content just constantly coming out. And I'm kind of like a fear of missing out person, and my FOMO is pretty It's pretty strong. So a lot of times I get a little anxious when I can't keep up with all the new content. And so when there's just constantly new content, all this just constant, and to me it was pretty overwhelming. And so I don't have the last few expansions, for Guild Wars 2 because it's just like I'll get to it one day. I have to finish I have to finish of Thorns first, and way back there. But I don't know. I think that I want to see some deep lore. You know what I mean? I want to see if we're going to Ore, I want to see the origins of a lot of the stuff. They talk about the gods and kind of the origins there. That's exactly what I want to see. I want to see stuff that's going to call forward, back to the future of Guild Wars 1 and what we enjoyed in that, because Guild Wars 1, the storyline is perfect.
Yeah.
It's wonderful, and I'd love to see a lot of callbacks to that, and just uh, bringing out the nostalgia, but also in a new way. I think Guild Wars 2 actually did that pretty well, especially at first, like Hall of Monuments tie-ins and the maps being, so far in the future, and you're like, oh, I recognize that. I recognize that. But at the same time, there's only so much that you can enjoy when everything is destroyed. Things that you loved in Guild Wars 1 are destroyed, and you're like, oh, well, that's cool. Now what? But I think if we go back in time and we get to see the origins of these places, that's going to be fun.
Yeah, for once we get to see a land that we've only seen in its destroyed state in its like non-destroyed state. Yeah, that was always
Yeah.
a bummer about things in Guild Wars 2. Like we finally get to go back to all of these iconic locations, and like half of them are like broken or destroyed. Like we get to go back to Vabi in Path of Fire, but there's like purple crystals littered all over the land, and oh, you get to go back to Commodon and Istan. Oh, it's taken over by undead and everything's in ruins and the sun spears are like dead. It's like, so it is refreshing to go back in time and see the origin. And one funny thing I saw somebody point out is, if since Guild Wars 3 is going to be a prequel, that means the entire game is pre-searing technically. So that's kind of cool to think about.
Oh yeah.
And getting to see like Abaddon and Doom and some of the original gods. Back in Guild Wars 2, there was like a one of the living world things was there was an in-game election, and whoever won the election would release a new fractal, and there was an Abaddon fractal that could have been released, and that one ended up losing the vote, and instead they came up with like the Thaumanova reactor fractal. And I was always so bummed that the Abaddon fractal never got released in Guild Wars 2, because I like desperately wanted to see that. So this is kind of like finally vindication of getting to go back into Ore. And in Guild Wars 2, I loved the dungeons. I loved Ara. Like I was a dungeon kind of speed runner and low man runner. Like we would like duo and trio Ara and sell paths to people. Like when I was super into Guild Wars 2, that was the kind of stuff that I was into. And I just loved that whole zone. So it'll be really cool to revisit it in its like state where it's not in ruins and covered with undead. So I'm excited about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think that would be cool. Um, I think we could definitely speculate on Guild Wars 3 forever. And I do want to do more shows like that in the future. I think that would be fun, especially once we start getting more information.
Yeah.
But I guess looking back also, I do want to make this episode a lot of nostalgia. Even, it might be annoying to some people, but not not to me. Um, what would you say is one of your fondest memories of the game, when it first came out? And maybe it's something that they've removed or something that you miss. Um, you know what I mean? Just like kind of an early fond memory of the game when you first started.
So I would say that, so I started playing in 2005, maybe like a month after release. That neighbor that I told you about had picked it up like when it first came out, and then installed it on my computer like, a couple weeks later, and that's when I got into it and got my own account and stuff. And I was not plugged into any like news or anything back then. It was just like I played the game, and that's what it was. And I logged in one day in 2006 and saw the announcement for factions in the little like login screen announcement area, and the background had changed. The login screen background went from being like that, like the Ascalonian campsite, to this like beautiful ocean with like a whale in the background, and the music was all different, and it was like talking about factions, and you could sign up for the beta. And I was like, my mind was blown because I was already obsessed with Guild Wars. And then to find out, like, oh no, there's actually going to be like a totally new game that's about to come out with a new continent and like new classes. Again, this was kind of my first real MMO, so I didn't even know like what an expansion was. So I remember playing through the factions beta. I think they actually called it a preview event back then, had a special name. And I was like about to go on vacation with my family. And I was like staying up super late the night before trying out this like trial of factions. And you could make the new classes, you can make assassin and ritualist. And if I remember correctly, it put you like you started in the marketplace and you would walk out of the door and it would instantly port you down to Pongmei Valley. Like it skipped the entire like city portion of the game, and you could just make the choice of going Luxon or Kurzik back then and like explore the various zones and do some like basic quests in the Luxon and Kurzik areas. And I just like fell in love with those environments. Like the Canthan continent and the zones that you go in will always be my favorite places in the game, and getting to like explore those for the first time in that beta event without like any knowledge that it was even going to come out at all was like was so much fun. I remember like kind of like creating all these mental maps of where everything was. Like, okay, when you go Luxon, like these are all the different towns and quests, and when you go Kurzik, you can like do this. And then I had to like pack up and go to like on a family vacation the next day. I stayed up way too late trying out this thing, and like was like super tired on the flight just thinking about like I can't wait till factions comes out. Like I was just thinking about it the whole time. And then of course when it actually released, like back then you had to go to the store and buy the game, and like I said, I was
Yeah.
13, 14, couldn't drive. I had to like beg my mom to take me to Target, I'm pretty sure, and she like couldn't on the day that it came out. And my cousin and my friend had like already started, and they were like making their way through the Xing Jade tutorial, and I was like behind. And finally I got to Target and got to install the game. And back then, uh like everyone was obsessed with assassin, and like nobody wanted assassins. Like you would try to get into a mission as an assassin and they would be like no, because everyone wanted to be like a cool ninja character. And I remember struggling through that game because of course I picked assassin. I was like an edgy teen. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Ironically, nowadays I'm much more of a ritualist fan. But those early factions days, specifically that preview event, and like having my mind blown that they could add more stuff to the game. Because back then it was like you buy a computer game and like you have the whole game, that's it. Like the fact that they could like add more to it was mind-blowing as a kid. And factions since then to this day is my favorite campaign, my favorite part of the game. Love Cantha. So yeah, that's my long-winded answer to favorite memory.
Well, that's cool. I think Kanta doesn't get enough credit, and a lot of people, and I know I was guilty of that. I would kind of make fun of the assassin when it first came out because they were so skinny and little, and it was just fun.
Well, Factions itself had a pretty bad reputation when it first came out. Like people didn't like it, which is
Yeah.
crazy because it's like a fan favorite. Like talk to any Guild Wars player now and they'll like praise Factions, but when it first came out, it was not popular. You could probably go back to some of the Guildcast episodes when Factions came out, and I think like you and Sanea probably were saying sometimes negative things about the game. Like
Oh yeah.
it's interesting like how the opinions have changed. But yeah, it was
Oh
not
yeah.
popular at first.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of a few different things. One of them was, our game is changing. Like, it's like a fear of change at that point. Um, but it definitely grew on me. And actually, like you said about the rituals, it's also one of my favorites. I'm a huge fan of like, I guess it could be compared to like a turret um class. where they lay down the turrets like engineers
Yeah,
in Guild Wars
exactly.
2. And I love that mechanic. And so and the fact that they're chained up ghosts, like that is so cool, and spirits and stuff. And so especially when I think back now on my time trying them both out, I didn't give the assassin a lot of credit. I didn't really give it that much of a chance because I was like, oh, daggers and backstab, and who cares about that? But it actually turned out to be really, really cool with the shadow step and things like that. Wow, that was a lot of fun. That was a fun class. I do have one of everything. I have to do that. I have to make one of everything and get them up to 20, and then I feel like once I do that, now I can really start to try them out. Um, but I guess going back, one of my earliest memories of the game of Prophecies, I guess, when it first came out, or I mean when I first started playing. I didn't play it when it first came out, but a couple months later, I kind of also thought that I was late to the game, which is funny because it was only a couple months after it released. And so I wanted to really kind of rush through it. But I remember that first step outside of Ascalon City. And I still, even today, when I go in pre-searing and I walk out that portal, go out into pre-searing and see those scales out there, and then you take a right, and I still remember seeing the little bandits with the fire in their hands, and they throw, and it was just those. It was kind of scary, and it might sound funny, but it was like I don't know how to what I should do, and so I'm like clicking on pressing 1 and 3, and I don't even know what I'm doing, and they killed me like pretty fast. Like they weren't messing around, it wasn't just like trash mobs. It was like actual those bandits once you got over there. And then when you get in the char area, holy mackerel. So I remember it being one of those things, and again, I think this might be why I started Guildcast. It was one of those things where I looked at it and I said, I have to actually learn this game. I have to actually not just run around hitting things while I'm like, you know, listening to music or whatever, doing something else, multitasking. It's like I actually have to pay attention, and then that's what got me into the story, and that's what got me into learning builds, and you know what I mean. So it really, the game did such a good job of really making you want to learn more and kind of become so involved in it, I guess. And that's why I made Guildcast, because I got too involved.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely is a game that requires actual effort for sure. Especially back then, you had to like group with real players before Nightfall came out. You only had henchmen, and they were pretty terrible, and they still are to this day. And so if you wanted to beat those missions, you had to like group up, and you had to know what you were doing. And there were some like famous moments like the monk strike at Thunderhead Keep, which is a iconic incident in Guild Wars history. And you always had to try to find a good monk for your party, and sometimes you'd sit in those mission outposts waiting and waiting, and no monk would show up, and then you'd like wipe at the end of the mission and stuff. Like it was a
Yeah,
struggle to get through that stuff back then, and especially me being a dumb kid. I just like clicked random skills and put them on the bar and didn't even like read what they did, and would die every
yeah.
2 seconds. And I mean, I'm still pretty bad at the game, but like but nowadays it's definitely been solved with there's like Mesmer Way and Metacomps and all this stuff and mercenary heroes. It can be quite easy if you kind of know what you're doing, but yeah, it was like the Wild West back then. And yeah, like you said, that
Yeah.
pre-searing area is like so nostalgic for so many people. And I've made like a billion Prophecies characters now, and every time I do step out there, even though I've done it so many times, it still is like magical almost. And the soundtrack and just everything about that zone is great.
Yeah. Oh, the music is so great. Yeah. My wife and I are actually thinking about starting over again, just starting from scratch, making new characters in Prophecies, and just playing through all of, everything through all of Reforged, since it includes, Cantha and the whole 9 yards. So I think we're going to do that. We're probably going to do that like next week. We're both really excited about it. It's funny because we used to play together, back then when it first came out. Well, maybe like a year after it came out, we played together. But it's just so many memories, and I don't know. It should be fun. Um, So I guess on the flip side of that, what is your worst, the like kind of the worst thing about Guild Wars 1 that you remember? And maybe it's even something that you hope to not see in Guild Wars 3.
Well, I mean, besides the obvious answer of like when they canceled the new campaigns, like that was
Yeah.
the worst, the biggest hit. But honestly, like more broadly speaking, kind of the era between like I don't know, like 2013 through like 2022 when the game was like pretty dead. It was kind of depressing to log in and there'd be like nobody in any of the outposts and there were like a couple of people here and there and the people in the community like were kind of like I mean not to like bash an entire group of people but the people that stuck back were kind of like jaded, unhappy, and negative about a lot of stuff. They were like really resented Guild Wars 2, and the game did not have the same vibe that it had when it was like at its prime. So, and that's when I started making some of those like the prophecies and factions playthroughs and some of those like Iron Man challenge videos back then, like in the late 2010s, and that those helped bring some people into the game. It brought people into the KOE guild, and we had like a solid community going. So if you had a good guild back then, you could kind of ignore the fact that the game was basically dead. So when Reforged came out, and all of these people came flooding back, and like people that played the game when they were kids, and they're now like adults with children of their own and jobs, and like reconnecting with a lot of people that have like the same experience and they're in the same stage of life and seeing all of these guilds and alliances grow and flourish and walking into these towns seeing them populated again has just been so cool. I mean, I just went and turned a negative story into a positive one. But yeah, my answer is like that the silent era of the game was kind of sad, but
Yeah.
it's over now. It's gone, which is great. Like it's no longer an issue. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and even though they did have layoffs back then, it's good to know that they didn't give up on the game because, NCSoft is infamous for canceling games at the first sight of dropped subs or dropped interest, and they've done it to so many games, Ion and things like that. And, what was that? Uh, Auto Assault. Wow, that's an old one.
City of Heroes
And
and all those,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So they're pretty notorious for that. So I'm glad that they kind of let ArenaNet do their thing and they didn't cancel the game. And I think Guild Wars 2 probably had a big hand in keeping the whole franchise afloat. But look at it now, right? I mean, like you said, with this Reforged, what was that, 7 months ago? I guess it came out, and everyone is doing exactly what we're doing now, having conversations about, oh yeah, remember this and remember this spell and this skill and remember when, we got together with this guild. And so I think it's like important. Everything comes in waves. And here we are in this 20-year wave that we're coming back to. And it's like the perfect time, it's a perfect time for Reforged and then into Guild Wars 3. As long as Guild Wars 3 doesn't take until like 2030. That might be a little too late, but yeah, I think it's a pretty cool time to be a Guild Wars fan, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I never really left, and I can kind of say that this era that we're in now is really something. Like I remember when they did the 20-year anniversary last year. I made a little video about it, and they added a couple of new skins and some like mini pet quests, and like on paper, like they didn't really add anything. It was like the game didn't change at all, really. It was just kind of a fun celebration, and for that little window of time, the game was like hopping. It was like super alive. And back then I reconnected with a bunch of new people. This was before Reforged was even like talked about. It was just the regular Guild Wars back then. And I'm wondering if maybe they saw like, wait a second, if we like put stuff here, people will show up. Like we've got something here. And obviously they had been cooking Guild Wars 3 in the background and trying to figure out what they're going to do with their other games moving forward. And then when Reforged got announced, when they first announced it, it really wasn't like a whole lot. It was just kind of renaming the game, and there's some like graphical improvements for like Steam Deck and stuff. But that was enough to like resurrect the game overnight. It turns out all ArenaNet had to do was like acknowledge the game's existence, and it like brought the player base back. And that was before they actually started adding content. When they added the the Melandra's Accord mode, which is like super cool because I was really into the like unofficial Iron Man challenge. I have like videos about that. And the Doom's Covenant, like hardcore mode, like that was super cool. And then they started adding these new dungeons, and they've been teasing like other new stuff down the road. Like we're people say like this is the golden age of Guild Wars. This is, I call it the platinum age, like because it's almost like better than it was in a sense, because we're all like older and different.
And we all have platinum hair now.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Perfect. But yeah, it's like, like we talked about at the beginning, like the KOE Guild has been around for almost 20 years, and we were connected to the GuildCast Alliance back then. Right now is the biggest, most active our alliance has ever been. Like we just filled up the entire alliance. Like we're having to come up with like policies of like, okay, if someone's not online for 3 weeks, do we kick them and like make room for new people? Like that has not happened to us like ever. Like and it's a 21-year-old game. Like what 21-year-old game has like in-game communities that are like thriving that much? It's crazy to me. It's wild.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting. And I think that's another reason that I really wanted to bring this podcast back too. I remember when Reforged first came out, I said I don't want to be like riding an obvious wave of popularity and like oh, GuildCast is back just at the same time as Reforged. But I started playing Reforged, and I started playing 2 again, Guild Wars 2 again, and I started thinking, you know what, I want to bring this back. I want to do this again because it was always a lot of fun. But I think on that note, I think we'll go ahead and end this episode here. I had a lot of fun, and I hope we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. I was really happy to be here and seeing GuildCast back. Honestly, I think I was more excited about GuildCast coming back than the Guild Wars 3 announcement. This is huge.
Oh, well, don't let Arena hear that.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Like I said, I literally cannot stop talking about Guild Wars. I'll talk about it anytime. So, I mean, I'm happy to share memories or whatever. Yeah, this was really fun.
We'll definitely have to do it again. You want to plug your YouTube channel and the guild?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can just find me on YouTube by searching Doombox Guild Wars. And our guild is still running 20 years later. Knights of Echovold. We have a website, knightsofechovold.com, or just go to like my YouTube channel and there will be a link to the guild in like every single one of my recent videos. Yeah, hopefully we'll find room because, like I said, it's pretty full. But we can shift some things around and kick some inactive people, and we'll hopefully find a slot for you if you're interested in joining.
Awesome. Yeah, I look forward to seeing some new people too. Now, what I want people listening to do is head to the Discord. I have a Discord now. I never thought I would have a Discord, but I have it. It's if you go to guildcastnow.com. There is a link there to go straight to the Discord, and you can sign up. And I'd love for you guys to go. There's a section in there where there's questions for the show, and I mean any of the discussion. There's a new episode discussion, and just tell me kind of your answers to a lot of these questions that we talked about today. Your earliest memories, your earliest fond memories. What do you want to see in Guild Wars 3? I mean, I would love to read, to kind of get that discussion going in the Discord and talk more about it. I think that'd be fun. But yeah, I think that's about it for this show. Again, thanks for coming on. We'll have to do this again, and I look forward to seeing you in game. And for everyone out there listening, remember, tell your friends, tell your guildmates about guildcastnow.com. Bye-bye.
That was awesome. Hearing that done live in the flesh. That was